Welcome to today's episode of Floativity. We dive into all things dreams. My guest today is Pam Mueller. She is a dream expert, spiritual director, author, and podcaster. She has been learning and working in the field of dreams for 20 years. She is passionate about engaging people's curiosity. She sees clients one-on-one and frequently presents workshops, lectures, and dream sharing groups all over the country. Pam's book, 33 Ways to Work with Your Dreams, A Beginner's Guide to Dreamwork, is available on Amazon and through her website, Sweet Georgia Pam. I love this conversation so much, and I cannot wait to dive in. Welcome to Floativity, a place to inspire and empower beings to embrace self-love and self-development for an achievable balance of productivity. I share different ways to come back to your intuition through spirituality, self-care, human design, cycle planning, wellness, and everything in between. Thank you so much for joining me this week. If this is your first time, welcome. And if you've been here with me before, thank you so much for coming back. I'm so excited to join you in this journey as we learn together. Hi, Pam. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited.
I always love to dive into my first question, and that is, what are your favorite self-care practices in your daily or weekly routine?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, sleep is very important to me for dream work purposes, but also for like overall health maintenance. So my sleep routine, while it's not real strict, I do not stick to I'm not very disciplined in sticking to a routine, but it is important that I get 7 to 9 hours of sleep. So that is one of my health practices. I also find it really necessary for me to make sure that I get alone time. Even though I work from home, the other family members in my house create a constant stir of energy. And so at some point in the day, I will isolate myself to a darkened room and just catch my breath and touch base with like Soul Pam and how we're doing, and then rejoin the day. So I need my alone time.
I love both of those things. I strongly agree with both of those, especially the alone time. It's very underrated. I think some people, and when I say some people, me 3 years ago, I was like so busy in the hustle and bustle of the world. I was a hairstylist, so I always had this energy like attaching to me, and like I was always afraid to be alone with myself. And then when I brought that practice in, it changed my life of being alone. Like every night my husband gets home from work, I'm like, bye. I'm shutting my door. I don't want anybody in. I'm going to have my headphones so I don't hear
Yeah.
you. I don't want to smell you. I don't want to see you. So,
When I get that time to myself and it's dark and there's no input coming in, it's easy to see how performative my day has become. And so it's nice to do that reset. It's really nice. So,
but
uh,
yeah, I think it's really underrated. And I think anyone that has an energy in their house besides themselves, especially with children, it could be scary at first being alone with yourself. But once you see the power in that connection with how am I feeling? What do I
yeah,
need? Like
yeah,
that should be the initial step before any self-care. Because sometimes we think like, I need a bath or I need to work out or I need to do this. But like, what if it was a part of our routine or ritual that we sat in and said, what do I need today? What is my self-care
right,
today? And I think it could
right.
change so many people because they're doing things that are expectations of maybe other people, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's very subtle, right? Even if it's like, I'm going to go take a bath, you're like, and have a playlist and listen to a podcast. All of that is great, but it's more input, it's more data. And so I'm a highly sensitive person, which means I process data more deeply and I take in more data and I can't turn that off. So I have to remove the data from my life. Yeah.
I mean, that kind of goes to the piece of your human design, looking at the energy centers in your human design and how that
Oh,
affects
tell me.
you.
Yes.
And so I was saving it towards the end, but I think it's
Okay.
really important that it comes up now is because there's 2 energy centers that I also have open. And I find that especially the emotional center, it is the triangle that is, if you're looking at it to the farthest right, that emotional center, once I realized when that's open, we are so susceptible to the energies around us, the emotions around us. And so it was one of those where I was like, I'm such an emotional person, but when I'm by myself, I'm not. And then I
Mhm.
realized that power of I didn't know that energetic boundary, how to set that before going into those spaces or
Right.
how to clear that energy after going into those spaces. And that is exactly why I got burnt out of being a hairstylist.
Wow.
And so looking at that piece, yours is also open. And so I think that's a big piece. If anybody has their emotional center open, you are highly sensitive to other people's emotions. And so taking a moment, leaving any sort of energy that's not yours and saying, is this my emotion or is this someone else's? And then
Yeah.
from there to realize we have the power to say, nope, it's not mine. I'm going to let that go. Because if not, we're going to reflect back that same emotion to someone. So if someone's coming at us angry, we're
Right.
going to reflect back that anger
Right.
because we don't know what else to do with it. We want to get that we have this open and then we're like, "Oh, no, I don't want this. I'm going to give it right back to you." And then it's this ping pong
Yeah.
of everybody's emotionally overwhelmed.
Oh my god. You're opening this amazing topic, can of worms, but it's so good and juicy. For me, the thing that I've noticed about the emotional piece is so high sensitivity is, it's an inherited trait, right? So there are people in my family who are also highly sensitive, and I'm super duper curious. And so I'm like, how does it show up differently for you? And what is that about, for you? And here's what I've noticed: introverted, energetic, emotional absorbers, me, I will walk into a room and the emotional spike in the room, right? Whatever it happens to be, or the I call it emotional triage, who needs the most emotionally will hit me, right? And I will start to feel that. As an introvert, I will hold it. An extrovert, my brother, will put it back out into the room so it gets amplified. But as an introvert, my response, which is not a good one, is to absorb it and hold it in case it comes up because I'll be ready to share that emotional burden with that person. But I'm absorbing it in the meantime. And I can't relax and I can't enjoy myself at a party because I'm worried about so and so over in the corner who really doesn't seem like they're having a good time and maybe came in with some repressed anger or whatever, whatever. But you're right, like it gets reflected back into the room, in my experience with the extroverted people who are like, "Does anybody notice this elephant in the room?" They're gonna call it out.
Yeah, and I think emotional center is colored in. It doesn't mean you're not an empath, but I do
Mm,
feel like when it's open, you have more of that empathy. You hold on and you're like, how can I help this person? And especially if you have a piece of that spiritual, nature, you're in the
mhm,
spiritual realm of
yeah,
wanting to be able to help people.
mhm,
But, I'm sure we're being in the spiritual world, you realize that holding on to things that don't serve us will also affect us. Again, like bringing it back to being a hairstylist, like I would lose sleep over what my clients were telling me in my chair
oh
because I would
god,
hold so
yes.
much space for them.
Yeah.
And then looking back, it's like I would have that energy of that one client and then I would let it leak to the next client and to the next client. So not only was I hurting myself, I would feel like I was hurting my other clients. Yeah, it's just as we kind of build up our intuition, build this relationship with ourselves, how
Mhm.
can we have that energetic protection? Because that's real. It's real. It's like
Right.
as you learn to build that, because it's not like one day you wake up and you have this shield of protection. You're like, "Oh, I'm gonna do it," and it's there. It's a practice, right? And the more you practice, the stronger it gets, and the more you see the benefits of it. And then not only that, it's, "Okay, I walked in this room, I felt this heavy energy. Now it's time for me to let this go. This isn't serving me. What can I do to let that go?" And then so it's building those practices of saying, "Oh, wait, this isn't mine to carry. I need to let this go." And
Right.
holding it on to them
Yeah.
onto someone else's heavy emotions is actually making it harder for them to process it because you're having this energetic cord, right? If we're trying to be empathetic, the best thing we could do is kind of hold that space for them, see if we can help them, and then cut the cord so that they have the power to release that energetic burden, right?
Right. That's right, that's
Yeah.
right, and this actually gets a little bit into the work that I do. So my, hairdresser environment, if you will, was the elementary school classroom, right? I was an elementary school teacher right out of college for, like, 7 years. I was just an absorber of everything, and I was really great when I was in the room with the kids by myself because I was with them emotionally and I could conduct it like an orchestra, and I knew where everybody was and how they were feeling and all of those things. But beyond just being in a room and sharing the space with emotionally open children, the teaching classroom, I burnt out of it as soon as I stepped into it, right? It was really hard for me. Several years later, my journey takes me into dream work and eventually takes me into a training in spiritual direction, getting a certificate in like holy listening. How do I hold space for someone to sit and be vulnerable in their story, to tell their story and offload it? And then how do I become a trusted listener so that they know that they're safe because I'm not going to pick their story up and try to fix it. I'm not going to run away with it. I'm not going to bring my own messy experience into their story that they've just offloaded into the room with us. So I was trained as I was doing this spiritual direction work. I was learning how to create a safe container, how to be compassionate with someone in their experience, and how to notice when I start leaning in too far and stepping in and illegitimately feeling things that are theirs to feel. And it has helped in every other aspect of my life, learning that skill, right? Because
Yeah.
now I can trust my empathy as opposed to being like dragged through all the waves of emotion by my empathy. Now it's a tool that I can use.
Yeah, I love that, and I
Mm.
full-heartedly agree in that. When I started diving into human design, I loved it because it can show pieces of a person they might not see themselves. So, like, you knowing that, like, you are energetically built to absorb people's emotions, like, that makes people feel seen and heard. But where I was
Yes.
having that issue with it was sometimes people don't need to be told what to do in the sense. And so I'm coach and I did not know the skill to kind of not just say, "Oh, you know what would help you?" You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so this is taking me fully out of my comfort zone. I feel like I'm good at holding space for people, but I also want to give them tangible thing that they can do. And so I'm trying to bridge that gap of like what's a coach, what's a strategist, and how can I meet in the middle? How can I do a little bit of both? I don't think people realize that being a coach, like, they should be certified because so many people think they're a coach in what they're doing, and they're not. And it took me going through a whole certification process to realize that, unfortunately, anybody can call them a coach. In the US, there's no standard, like, anybody can call themselves a coach, but in the UK, they just passed that you have to be, certified, and the US is about 5 years behind the UK. So it is
Mhm.
going in that direction that
Yeah.
there is gonna be some sort of regulation, but I think that's so important to say that if you are trusting someone to be in that space with you, there should be some sort of training behind it
Yeah.
so that you're not putting someone in a spot where you're not actually helping them, right?
Yeah, and it's the case of, like, when you know better, you do better, right? I didn't know that I was missing the skill of holding the safe container for somebody, right? So, my work started with dreams, and I was just like, "Anybody wanna talk about dream interpretation? I'm just interested," right? So, I'll sit in the playground, and we'll just play with it, with anybody, and when I first started doing it, I started a meetup because I just had exhausted my family and friends. They didn't wanna talk about dreams with me anymore. And so I was like, well, there are some people out there that want to. We would meet in the Whole Foods dining room once a month. And eventually it became twice a month. And we would just meet and sit in the public area and share dreams and share our thoughts about dreams. And I didn't know any better. And it was just it was a learning phase for me to start to recognize like, oh, what they are bringing to the table is really vulnerable storytelling and they don't know what they're sharing about themselves until we start to really, dive into it. And so that's what the evolution for me was recognizing that what I was doing was probably fine, but there was a better way to do it, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm with you. It's like when you know better, you do better. And when there are these programs to train you to certify your progress, that's worth something.
It is, and I mean,
Yeah.
people are literally putting their life in your hands, and
Yeah,
so it's
right.
it's important to, 1, find the person that really speaks to you that you feel comfortable with, but, know
Absolutely.
that there is a reason that there are programs that certify people, and, I do hope that regulation comes to the US because I can see there can be a little bit of that detrimental work. And I mean, the goal is to help someone find a better path in their life, coach
Yeah.
them into being the best version of themselves. I know you touched a little bit about what brought you to the field of dreams.
Mhm.
But yeah, is there any more that you can share with listeners about like what opened your eyes about it and more of that evolution with it?
Yeah, for me, it was really a personal crisis in faith, I guess. I mean, we're gonna bring spirituality into this, and ultimately, I'm spiritually independent. But when I was in the teaching field, I was totally burnt out. I was like, "You know what? It's fine because we're gonna start our family soon, and we'll just have children, and I'll be at home, and it'll be" I was okay with it. But when we started to try to, start our family, it wasn't working for us. And so there was this intersection of this career field I've chosen is not working for me and I have to get out, and a for infertility experience, which was traumatic and isolating. And I experienced 5 years of trying to conceive. And then we eventually got fertility assistance. We have a brilliant son who's 13 now. Good Lord help me. And lovely. But then I also experienced miscarriages, 3 miscarriages after our son. And so ultimately was like an 8, 9-year journey of infertility and experiencing this emotional crisis of what does it mean? If I'm not going to become a mother, what does that mean? At the same time going, also, I don't know what I want to do in the world. So for me, I started looking at my dreams when I was in my what I would consider like the darkest hour of isolation for me, where I didn't want to talk about infertility with anybody because it was horribly depressing at the time. I was just kind of in the throes of the dark night of the soul journey for me. And I started to pretend that dreams would make sense. Like, oh, yeah, what if I could make sense of this weird stuff that happens at night? Those are things I could talk about because they felt safer. And lo and behold, I started Googling what my dreams meant. I started getting dream dictionaries and going like, oh, well, wait a minute. That makes a little bit of sense. That was weird. And then it started happening over and over. And I started thinking like, there's no way that dreams can actually be helpful. Nobody's talking about this. Like, there's no way that that's an actual source of inner wisdom. Surely that's not true. And then it just kept being true. And I found that I was good at it. I started to get really good at recognizing symbols and the metaphor that was being presented. And people, because I was still at the time in the classroom, people started coming to me, teachers after hours would be like, hey, Pam, I had a weird dream. And it just became this playground. And it was a relief from my regular life and a playground. And this like whole new part of me was birthed into being while I was trying to start my family.
Yeah.
So I just went down the rabbit hole while I was distracting myself from what was going on in real life. And then over time, it solidified into this muscle that I had strengthened. And I was like, no, I'm good at this. Oh, no, this is the way that I can really sit with people and hear them and show them their own inner brilliance. So I fell in love with like every aspect of it. And then I was like, I'll just be a dream interpreter. And people were like, Pam, that's not a thing. Is that a thing? Can you do that? And I'm like, I don't know, but I don't know. But that's clearly where I'm going. I found my way to spiritual direction because it was like the next step was, oh, not only am I listening to dreams, but people started to say things like, okay, I've never told anybody this before. But so when you start talking about your nighttime dreams, which you're like, I don't know, I had it last night, whatever, and you come at it from this real playful place, eventually you get into also one time I dreamt it and then it came true. What the hell does that mean? So people like follow their own path and start sharing dreams and end up sharing some deep mystical experiences.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing all that and
Mm.
being open and honest about your, experience with it. I found in, doing this podcast, so many people have transmuted a hard time into something beautiful and inspiring and purposeful. And so, one, thank you for being here and doing that because to show people that, we all go through hard times, but where can we find the hope or the thing that's going to get us through it? And so it's beautiful that you found dreams in that and that you found that like purpose behind it. And then the other piece is how beautiful it is that when you decided you were going to do this and people are like, you can't do this, that you took control and said, like, I know this isn't the normal expectations, but this is where my soul is being led to. This is where my purpose feels fulfilled. So I'm going to keep following that. And so I think so many people are trying to look outside of themselves to follow what other people are doing or other people's line of action. And there's so much power to show when someone is just like, no, I know in my soul that I'm meant to follow these steps, these breadcrumbs towards something bigger that's
Thank you.
inspiring and powerful.
Thank you.
And, I love that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, my dad always said, like, people tend to talk about, like, at the end of their retirement or whatever, they tend to talk about their path as if it was, like, linear the whole way. He said it's never it's a pinball machine. One thing just pushes you over to the next thing, and then suddenly you do this other thing, and it's only in hindsight that you can look and see the path or the trajectory, right?
It's like picking up the tools that are going to help you towards the end, like towards
Mhm.
what you're doing. And that's a lesson that I've recently come to realize was I kept saying, okay, this is going to be the thing. This is the thing that I'm going to make money. I've been trying to find this. What am I supposed to do in this life? And it's not about boom, I'm there, I'm in it. Like that's not the case. It's like, what are these little tools and what can take me? Honestly, looking back, my own ego was blocking me from the beginning because I said
Mm.
from the beginning, I'm not working one on one with people again. I was a hairstylist. I burnt out. I'm never doing that again. But here's the caveat of all that. Since I've started this whole thing, I do podcasts. I meet with people weekly and we talk about their business. And they're like, you need to be a coach. And I'm like, nope, not doing that. I'm not doing that. And then I'm in a coaching program and I still even said, "No, I'm not going to be a one-on-one coach. I want to take this tool and have it something else." And then
Mhm.
once I started to do my practicum sessions and I started connecting with people and I started to see my true gifts, my intuitive gifts, helping people come through, I'm like, "Dang it, ego. You've been trying to keep me safe from that boundary issue that I had before, but the difference is I know how to set those boundaries now. I know how to do those things,
Right.
you
Yes.
know? And so that's
Yeah.
brilliant that your dad said because it isn't like this one thing's going to get you there. It's like what tool can you take now? What's going to help support you in this moment? Are you ready to make a real change in your life? Here are just a few benefits on working with me as a certified holistic coach. Together, we gain insight into your authentic self. We explore your design with modalities like human design, psychovitality, and astrology. And you'll gain a deeper understanding of your unique strengths, challenges, and your purpose in life. Together, we work on improving relationships. Understanding your own design helps you communicate more effectively with other people, build stronger relationships, and have more fulfilling connections around you. We increase your productivity. By aligning your work with your natural rhythms and your strengths, you'll be able to work smarter and not harder, achieve your goals, and live with a greater ease in your life. We work together on reducing stress and overwhelm. By working with me, you'll learn how to manage your energy, reduce stress, and cultivate more balance in your life. We work on a more authentic life. When you're aligned with your unique design, you'll feel more confident, empowered, and fulfilled in every area of your life. Those are the benefits with working with me. As a certified intuitive life coach, my focus is not telling people about their human design, psychovitality, or even astrology. Instead, my role is to help you discover and align with your desires and take aligned action based on how you operate. It is time for you to look within at how powerful you are and welcome your intuitive intelligence. If you want to work with me, head to karadempsey.com/offerings.
Yeah,
Yes.
and that's the last thing the ego wants is like, no, like, show me the trajectory, explain it logically first, and then we'll follow that path, right? But there's no logic to the intangible learning to listen to your instinct or learning to listen to your gut or your emotions or what like really makes you passionate or what really feeds your soul. All that stuff is invisible. And so
I know.
it's like having to practice listening in a different way.
Yeah.
Like what feels good today or what's the next step that isn't going to answer the big question and put like stability and security as the number one thing, but what's intriguing me right now? And
Yeah.
just follow that little breadcrumb. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
counterintuitive. I mean,
I know.
it's funny that that's counterintuitive is the word, but it's ego, it's counter ego.
I know. It's hard when we get in our own ways, but when we take a moment and we take that time to reflect with ourselves by ourselves, that's when the true intuition comes through, but we have to, like, make time for it. If we're
Mhm.
sitting there scrolling on, social media or binging on TV, it's probably not
Yeah.
gonna come through.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Right. True.
so dreams have been a huge piece of, I think, my spiritual growth. But, it's been more recently that I've dove into this whole like spiritual awakening piece, I guess you can say. But looking back as a child, I've had so many things happen to me within my dreams. And so that's kind of where it comes from. And
Mhm.
so one of them was a reoccurring dream that I had as a kid. And it kept happening. It kept happening. It was a scary dream. I
Mhm.
could feel it.
Mhm.
And then it happened. It happened different than in my dream, and I will say the dream that kept happening was changing. And
Mhm.
so that's like one piece of my dreams that I feel like have had this spiritual connection. Another piece is I've had many people who have just passed away come to me in my dreams. And I mean, one instance, there was a girl I was friends with in middle school, and she was missing.
Wow.
And she came to me in my dream as a child, younger than when I was friends with her. And when I saw her, I knew in my bones, like, they were not going to find her alive. And that she was
Wow.
saying that she was okay. It's like, one, it scares me a little bit.
Sure.
2, how do I transmute this into something that I can use? And, like, do you
Yeah.
have any, like, insight? But I've had many dreams where I've dreamt it and it's come true. And the context of the dream could be scary, but when I woke up, I was like, "Oh, I'm not scared about this at all." So, I do feel like I
Yeah.
have the discernment is this is gonna be a good thing or this is gonna be a bad thing. But, yeah, I
What
would
a
love to hear your
powerful
take.
gift. Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I have lots and lots of thoughts, of course. So trying to
Yes.
trying to capture them and get them out is always the challenge for me. Well, I mean, what a powerful experience. This is the thing about dreams, especially for people who are intuitive and spiritual in nature already. Dreams can validate that for you. And the thing about them is it is an intimate, undeniable encounter that you didn't seek out, right? You are encountering source, whatever that is for you, in your own experience that is not for anyone else because it was experiential for you. And so for me, it creates that not only the validation of your intuitive nature, but also a direct connection with a very personalized source for you, right? So
Yeah.
the way that I approach those experiences is to encourage people to do something in the inner realm, in your imagination, where the dream happens, where your meditation and prayer happens. Go to that same inner landscape, revisit the dream, and then, oh, how do I say this? And then have a dialogue with whatever source is for you. Or ask the question of like, who are you? What is source, right? So you're starting to create a bridge of communication that is intimately personal for you and your higher realm, the holy whatever is what I call it.
Yeah.
When I have a dream of somebody who's passed and they come to me in an experience and I'm like, oh, hello, visitation. Hello, beautiful soul. I will then close my eyes, go into that space, and just be in the presence with not just me and that soul, but the dream maker as well. There's 3 of us in that space for me.
Yeah.
So That's how I handle that is I do some sort of blessing, some sort of response, but in the same place that the dream occurred, as opposed to oftentimes people will wake up, their logical thinking comes on board and they're like, I need to act on this and go tell that person in the real world, right? That may be the second thing that occurs that you need to do, but the first thing is to acknowledge it in the inner realm, because then you're building a dialogue with that part of you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So to clarify, am I still in that dream space where I try to have that connection, or I wake up and I try to revisit it once I wake up?
Yes, you want to do it once you wake up because you're using
Okay.
your conscious waking mind now to integrate with your dreaming mind and the dream maker, whatever that happens to be, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that's the integration piece is I'm going to consciously revisit this experience now. And so you're bringing a new part of yourself into the dream experience, because when you're sleeping, you're just subject to whatever you get shown or whatever's brought to you. But when you wake up and you go, let's revisit that, now you're adding your own blessing to it.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
so much sense. I
Yeah.
actually I have a little dream journal I keep next to the bed, and I go in out of consistently using it, but I was finding that, like, I would wake up and it would be there, and if I didn't grasp it, it would flutter away. And
Yeah.
so that's where I would kind of, like, put it in writing to say this is kinda what happened, and I would visit it, but I never actually connected with source and that connection, so that makes so much
Hmm.
sense.
Hmm.
And, like, I just didn't know how to strengthen it. Like, I've always known
Sure.
there's some sort of connection, so that's really
Yeah.
helpful. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. The first time that I dreamt something that came true the very next day, I freaked out. I was like, what does this mean? Why would I experience it? Can I tell the future now? Like, I just thought I was like the greatest thing all of a sudden of like, oh my God, look what I can do. Like, I had this dream and here it is. And it's kind of the opposite. It's kind of an introduction to how do I normalize intuition for myself? How do
Yeah,
I keep it's like the energetic waves have to stay still from from the outside. How do I keep my ego from jumping on this and messing up the lines of communication, which are really pretty clear when I'm asleep? My ego's
yeah,
not involved.
it's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, I mean, that makes sense. A lot of, the beginning pieces of my spiritual awakening was I was having these visions in my meditation. So I wasn't asleep, I was meditating, and I was having these visions of this life that I kept saying, "There's no way. That's not possible for me." Shortly after that, the pandemic happened, and I was living it. And so it was one of those things where I could not only was I dreaming what was what could be a possibility in the future, it was also that I was meditating what could be a possibility. And so bridging that gap and
Yeah.
again, leaving that space, that time
Mhm.
alone for that to come through is really powerful. First time that I had someone pass away visit me knowingly. If I could probably go back to like my child, I did have a lot of people pass away, like friends and stuff. And I wouldn't be surprised if they came to me. I just probably wasn't as much aware of it. But the first time where it felt so real that like I did not know what to do was when the night my dad passed away. I'll just give you a little funny story. So my grandma always said that when she died, she would come back as a bird and, excuse my language, shit on our cars to let us know that she was watching over us. It was like her humor.
Sure.
And so it was like just my dad and like that side of the family's humor or whatever. The night we came home from the hospital, there was a bird in the den where my dad always hung out. And so it brought this lightness and this funniness of frantically trying to get this bird out of the house. And if you know my dad's humor, I was like, this is him. Like, this is him.
Wow.
He's here. And that
Wow.
night, I have never felt such a strong presence, but I was scared. And I was like, Dad, I can't take your humor right now. Like, I've had enough. I'm at my limit. And I look back and I'm
Nice.
like, oh, I'm so sad. Like, I wish I would have been able to handle that and connect with him more on that point of like, he was in that space. I've had people come to me to relay other messages to people to tell them like they're okay now. And
I mean, it's
if
so
I,
beautiful. It
it
speaks
is,
to our interconnectedness, again, more than it speaks to a person, like that inflated ego response, which is a totally natural response. For me, this is my mission in life is to just let people be less afraid of the dream space, because you're exactly right. I mean, part of the benefit of the ego is that we can say like, hey, dreaming mind, cool it. Don't show it to me that way again. Come up with something else, right? And that's a real benefit. But it's also this trusted place that we can actually just let go and just trust that whoever is creating the dreams with us, for us, are doing it on our behalf, cheering us on towards mental and emotional and spiritual well-being. And once I learned that, like, wait a minute, this is a safe part of me, and even the nightmares, I mean, there are things that we can do to mitigate nightmares, but this is a safe part of me that's always going to be truthful, even if there are truths I don't want to hear. Then I was like, oh, I have the capacity to really be honest with myself. I have the capacity to look at deep truths. And sometimes I have the capacity to experience some really profound interconnectedness. Like,
Yeah.
who doesn't want to know that about themselves?
Yes. I mean, I think anything that can strengthen your intuition is beautiful and empowering because I truly believe if people lived off of their intuition,
Mm.
there would be less health issues. I feel like there's so much. I honestly feel like I burned out from my career boundaries, but also my intuition was telling me things. And I was trying to live in this logical mind of like, that's not possible. I'm going to live a way that other people expect me to live. It's not possible for me to live a life that truly fills my soul. And then
Yeah.
I woke up one day and I realized, oh, wait, if I want to have a certain life, it is up to me to do that, right? It's up
Right.
to us. And
Right.
so if we can come from a place of strengthening that intuition and building that, I ended up having a dream about I had to make a difficult decision a while ago. I asked, like, show me the
Uh,
way. I had a
right.
dream that night, and the dream in itself did not feel scary, but I feel like I have to kinda share it a little bit, but it was ultimately about going on a trip, and I just didn't feel like it was the safe thing for my family and I to do at the time,
Yeah.
and I was disappointing a lot of people not going, and that was hard for me to say no to, and so I was shown a dream about me and just my personal family, not other people that I was supposed to be going on the trip with, that we were on vacation. There was a boardwalk, but the funny part was there was this huge object in the sky, and it looked like it was this life-changing for everyone on Earth kind of thing, and I was like, "I don't know what this means." It didn't make me feel bad. It actually made me feel good, and then 6 months later, I'm on vacation with my husband and my kids, and we're on a boardwalk. The same picture I had in the dream, and do you know what that object was? The object that I saw was a TikTok filter. It was like I don't know if you saw that trend with the planets spinning in the sky, that
Yes.
was
Yes.
mind you, this filter did not exist when I had this dream, but that was literally what it was, and I see this filter, driving home, like, I see it driving home, and I'm like, "That was my dream saying, 'You're not going on that trip. This is the trip you're gonna be going on differently,'" and it showed me pieces of it, and so it was one of
Wow.
those where, logically, I'm like, "That this can't be good. There's literally a planet about to run into Earth, and we're going to die," and then I just had to laugh, and I was like, there you go, there's TikTok for you.
Oh my
So,
god. But in the dream, it felt okay?
it did, yeah, no, it
Yeah.
did not feel like I was like, everybody was freaking out around me, and I was
Mhm.
like, "This is great, like, this is a cool view," you know what I mean? I just sat back and enjoyed it, there was no scary part about it at all, so
Yes. Yeah, so that's one of the things that I focus on with people is, like, go with the emotions that are in the dream, because that's the perspective that you're being provided with, is the emotional fingerprint in the dream. That's where you go. It's because when you wake up, your logical mind comes on board and goes, "That should have been scary. Ugh, that was a scary dream." It's if it wasn't in the dream, then it wasn't for you. Yeah, that is
yeah,
such a cool experience. And
yeah, yeah,
what a validating encounter that something in you is bigger than you.
yeah.
Something in you is beyond your ego, is beyond your capacity to control or understand it. So in that way, dreams become a more trustworthy place.
Yeah, I've been trying to find that piece. I would love to know, like, for listeners, what are a couple, like, common occurrences in dreams that maybe you can give them and, like, what they mean?
Yeah, sure. One of the favorite ones that people like to talk about is the flying dreams. I don't know that flying is a really common experience and that we don't dream it very often, but when we do, it's really memorable. And so it's one of the ones that gets talked about a lot. So flying dreams can have a couple of different meanings. The first is it can mean that you are actually ungrounded. If you're indulging too much, if you are experiencing an ego inflation, then a flying dream can be an indicator of that. And again, the thing that would tell you is that emotional fingerprint. The other thing that it can mean is that it can be compensating for when you are being too hard on yourself in waking life. You can experience a flying dream because our psyche likes to balance itself out. Dreams can compensate for what we're going through. If you're having high stress, high anxiety, and you're just like knee deep in the mud and the guck of life, you can have a flying dream to kind of bring you an experience of some fresh air and some enlightenment to help you with your life. So it can be compensating or it can be showing an inflation. Other thing is it can be spiritual progress or spiritual calling. If you're moving in the right direction, you can have a flying dream that would be like, yes, this is what is going to, how do I say, like move you forward towards your goals. It's going to bring you up higher in elevation, right? So flying dreams is one. Another is water in a dream, which is not a particular type of dream, but the element of water is one of the most common elements that we experience in our dreaming. So water often denotes either our emotional state or our spiritual state. So if you dream, for example, of a tidal wave, then you can think of a tidal wave of emotions. If you dream of really muddy water with maybe dangerous, out for me, it was alligators under the water, then I've got some very messy, muddy, you talk about being entangled in other people's emotions as an empath. It means my emotions are muddied. And there is some threat to that for me. I'm feeling a real threat, right? So those are just two that come to mind, flying dreams and water in dreams.
Yeah, I was trying to think. I had one that came to mind where I was like trying to see if it fit in there. I don't know what it means, but I'm gonna definitely keep that one up there
Yeah.
for
Okay.
sure.
All right. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I was going to say we can
So
dive in if you want, but we don't have to. You could save it for your own reflection.
well, I have one that I wouldn't mind bringing up. It does not have to do with water. It's a reoccurring dream, number one, but it has to do ultimately with being a hairstylist. And I would show up to do a client. There wouldn't be a space for me. I felt really unprepared. I felt very undervalued by the salon. And mind you, I did hair for 19 years before I stopped. And so I had a variant of bosses, a variant of like coworkers, and every time it changed. It was never the same people at any point. And
Okay.
so the process of trying to take care of this client felt forever, and I felt like I wasn't satisfying their needs. I think
Yeah.
it comes up with being a worthiness factor. And I'm like,
Mm.
no, I built so much self-worth. But I
Mhm.
think it might come to the fact of trying to prove my worth. Not that I don't feel worthy, it's that I'm still trying to prove myself in this new space.
Yeah. Oh
And
my
so
God. Yeah.
I had a dream that changed after having this revelation, but I would like to hear your take, and then I'll tell you the dream that I had in response to
That's
it.
God, that's so cool. Right. Dreams talk to each other, right? So there can be an
Mhm.
evolution, especially with recurring dreams. I love it. Yeah. I mean, that everybody has a version of the work stress dream, right? So my friend Melissa is a former radio DJ. And so hers is the DJ board doesn't work and there's dead air on the thing, right? I'm a teacher. So mine is the teaching, the classroom where nobody will listen to me. So everybody has their own version of that. For me, what's important is that you recognize, just like you have, what it's indicating, right? So it means that in your waking life, something has triggered that old pattern, that old behavior. And so when you wake up from one of those dreams, the important thing is, what do I do with today, knowing that that dream got triggered somehow, right? So what do I do with today is I recognize, how did I used to respond to old work stress? what's the healthier way to do it now? And I make sure that during that particular day, I am very gentle with myself. And I'm very tuned into how I talk to myself and how I take care of myself, especially when it comes to work on that
Yeah,
day.
that's so powerful. That makes so much
Yeah.
sense for sure.
And then it
Um,
will evolve the dream.
yeah.
So tell me the
Yeah,
evolution.
yeah. So the, evolution was I went in, my most toxic boss I've had in my career was there, and she wanted me to do this person's hair in a way that just did not feel good to me. And I think I was like, "Just give me a minute." And I know this is this is not how I would be professionally, and I was like, "Give me a minute, I gotta go do something, I'll be back." I left, and then I called on the phone and I said, "I'm sorry, this doesn't serve me, I'm done with this," and I never went back. And
Wow.
it was one of those moments where I was like, "Oh, I don't need." 1, I was overcomplicating what I was doing to try and prove myself. I don't need that anymore. I know that I'm worth what I'm going into, and I'm gonna leave that old pattern of proving myself for people. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what they think.
That is
So,
so perfect. And what is brilliant about it is that you experienced it just by witnessing it, right? Just by holding that idea of maybe worthiness as a factor in old patterns or in stress or whatever. And then the dream took over and said, almost like you have graduated that life lesson. Like, here is your reward. We're going to play it all the way out for you, right? That's so amazing.
yeah, thank you. I like that confirmation because that's what I felt like, and I was like, "Was it? Have I? I don't know. Have all the things come
Yes.
in for me yet? No, but I'm feeling better about the process of what I'm doing." So, yeah, thank you for that because I've had some people also talk about the dream, and I liked the way they explained it. They helped me come to realization of what it meant. But
Mhm.
you telling me on leaving the space, seeing how I can go about my day when these dreams come about, that
Mm,
piece I really needed, and so I appreciate
good.
that.
Yeah,
So,
for
what's the
sure.
lesson? How can we learn from it? That's huge. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
well, this has been awesome, and I would love for listeners to hear all about your offerings and how they can find you.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, clearly I could talk about this for ages and ages, and I do. So people can find me on social media. I'm all over social media at Sweet Georgia Pam. Right now, TikTok is the hottest thing. So I have found a really great audience on TikTok, and I have a whole lot of fun there. So that would be where I would suggest people go first. I also have a podcast called The Hidden Meaning of Dreams, where we just take, just like we did with you with this one, Kara, we take one dream. My producer brings it to me, and then I just unpack it. If this were my dream, these were the things I would think about. This is what I would want to do. This is what I would wonder about. They're real short episodes and really easy to listen to. And it kind of gives you a perspective of like my Pam thinking brain and how it works so that it's a little different than a dream dictionary. I've written a book called 33 Ways to Work with Your Dreams that is maybe the next step beyond a dream dictionary. And they can find that. It's on Amazon, but it's also on my website, sweetgeorgiapam.com. That's kind of the hub for everything that I offer in regards to dream work and also in regards to spiritual direction, because some people feel called to, we want to listen to the stories from waking life as if it is a dream. So we look for the intuition and the symbolism and the metaphor that is playing out in waking life when we do spiritual direction together. So, yeah,
I love that. I will make sure all these links are in the show notes
great.
because you have access to that. And I did find you on TikTok. That is how we connected. And I agree. I feel like TikTok is that fun outlet where we can really truly show up as ourselves and find the people that are meant for us. And
Absolutely.
I don't feel like the rest of the social medias really have that space. So yay. I'm
Yeah,
glad I
I
found
know.
you on
And for
there.
technology, like this is
I
something you
know.
couldn't have envisioned 5 years ago. Like, yeah, I'm going to be, on this new platform and reaching all these thousands of people. And it's been
I
really great. Yeah,
Yeah. One question about your podcast. Is it something that listeners submit their dreams or is it
they
that you
can.
do it live
Yeah.
or
No, we don't do it live. We pre-record it. But absolutely listeners can submit dreams. I use people's dream comments when I do a TikTok, people will say, "Well, this was my experience," or "I had this dream," whatever, and we look for sometimes celebrities will talk about their dreams and tweets and, articles, news articles and stuff, but we are totally open to anybody who wants to come on the podcast and we can do a live scenario. Yeah, would you like to? Oh my God. We will set that up for sure because that would
Okay,
be
sure.
so great. Yes. Yeah.
Awesome. I got plenty to choose from. So I'll give you a list and you can choose which ones
Oh,
would be
good.
good for your podcast. So
Okay. Okay. Sounds good. I
awesome.
love it. Great.
Hey, Pam, I really loved this conversation and I
It's
hope we
been
stay
so
connected.
great.
Yeah. And then, I'll be on her podcast. So I'll make sure I share that when that comes about. So thank you so much, Pam, and we'll chat soon, okay?
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode. If this was your first time, welcome. And if you've joined me for previous episodes, thank you so much for coming back. Before you go, could you share my show with a friend and subscribe? Those few seconds make a big impact on my show, and I'd be grateful for the support. I absolutely love this interview with Pam. I enjoyed also being on her podcast, and so if that episode is out, I will link it in the show notes. If you want to find out how to connect with Pam, check the show notes, and all the links mentioned will be at karadempsey.com/57. Thanks for being here, and we'll chat soon.